to have one of our school pull-up banners. This isn't the wallpaper that I have at home or anything like that. But we're really delighted that you're able to join us here this evening. As Emma says, my name is Murish McCorrick. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of History, Anthropology, Philosophy and Politics, and I'm going to coordinate things this evening. I have 5 of my colleagues who are going to speak about the different disciplines and programs within the school. As Emma has mentioned, we are recording, but if you want to ask a question, either in the if you click on the conversation button when you hover over the screen, you can see the we'll try and respond to you in real time by that means. I'm sorry we can't meet in person. Obviously, it's a very strange time for us all, and I hope you and your families are doing okay at this time. It is really quite difficult, and we're all adjusting to new ways of working. We ourselves are teaching in this way, so we're getting used to using this system. Now, before I go any further, in terms of Belfast, in terms of Queen's, we're not going to be speaking about that this evening. Instead, we're going to be focusing on the school that you have expressed an interest in coming to, and we really hope you do come. It would be fantastic to welcome you into our school. So we're going to take you through what we do. I'm going to say a couple of things here before I hand over to my colleagues from the various disciplines, and they'll take any questions, and we're going to have a couple of our current students speak to you at the end as well. Sarah Foster from History, Katrina Edgington from History and French, and Catherine Garters from Philosophy and Politics. So I'm going to start the slideshow here and just say a couple of things. Well, I've already said some of this. I'm going to begin now with a short overview of the school, and you can see there we're going to have 5 presentations on history, anthropology, philosophy and politics, and then the philosophy, politics and economic pathway, and then we'll hear from the students, and then we'll have time for Q&A. But as I say, just fire in the questions if anything comes up, and we'll try and respond as we go along. So moving ahead, teaching at our school, if you join us, you will realize very quickly we place a big emphasis on teaching excellence. All our staff have a PhD minimum requirement. When they join Queen's, they're obliged to undertake a teaching and a qualification, and there are a lot of prizes, and we have tremendous encouragement within Queen's to go for these, and within our disciplines as well. There's quite a premium placed on our style that we teach in ways that help people to learn. Our teaching is also very much informed by our research, and this is one of the defining characteristics of Queen's. It's one of the Russell Group universities, so we're a research-intensive university. So the people who teach you are the ones who are involved in research in that area as well. So you are, in many regards, hearing from the best voices about what is going on in the respective disciplines. As a school, as you can see by our title, History, Anthropology, Philosophy and Politics, we're quite interdisciplinary. Your time in Queen's will be characterised by the ability to learn about not just your discipline of choice, but other disciplines as well. And you will do this not just in big lecture halls, although there will, of course, be some big lectures, but everybody will experience small group teaching. This is very important to us, that we engage with students in small group settings where you have a chance to discuss, because we believe it's only through discussion and talking that ideas and innovations will really sink in. And we have a big emphasis in recent years on research skills, because we realise not everybody wants to work in a university, for example, but we're very concerned about employability generally in the labour force, and that people pick up skills that will be useful and transmittable across a variety of employment sectors when they leave with their degree from Queen's. Just a little bit about our international outlook. We pride ourselves on this. We've very international, 24th in the world in the most recent ranking. We have very good connections around the globe. We have a lot of academics who come to us, a lot of students as well from places like the United States, Canada, Australia, Asia. Quite difficult at the moment for obvious reasons, but we're hoping to get back into that as soon as we can once the worst of the coronavirus is over. We have various schemes which allow for students to spend a period of time studying abroad There's the Erasmus scheme, which, as far as we know, is still ongoing, although the Brexit still has to work its way through. But there will be exchanges to other universities. We have a very successful number of exchanges at the moment to American universities, for example, which I've yet to meet somebody who hasn't had a great time doing that. During the summer, we have a number of summer schools in conflict transformation, a very popular one, and one for those who are particularly interested in Irish studies as well. And they're a couple of weeks spent doing tours and hearing from a variety of people in respect of those areas, conflict transformation and Irish studies. We also offer a number of workplace placements and internships. So as a part of your degree, you can spend a bit of time in a working environment, and you can pick up some academic credit for doing this. This is mainly in year 3, where people will go and work. For example, we've had people work in the BBC, in local government departments, local charities and NGOs, intergovernmental bodies, museums, galleries, depending on what discipline you're studying. And there are also some opportunities for international placements as well. And this is these are very popular because people like to have that line in their CV saying, well, I have a degree from Queen's, but also I have employment experience as well. The university more generally, as I said, I won't go on too much about this, but we do pretty well. We're in the top 1% of universities in the world. We've a couple of very large or very prominent institutes connected to our school as well. First of all, there's the Senator George J. Mitchell Institute for Global Peace, Security and Justice. We call it the Mitchell Institute. He insisted on the full title. We also have an Institute for Irish Studies, and within Anthropology, we have an Institute for Cognition and Culture, which is one of very few in the world in existence. So these provide fantastic fora to engage with famous academics from around the world who work in these fields, and there's always things going on, lectures, seminars, workshops, symposia as well, for you to take the opportunity to engage with during your time. We also have a lot by way of student support. Every student that comes into Queen's is allocated a member of staff who is their personal tutor, so somebody you can go to if you have any concerns about anything outside of a module or exams or something like that. On your degree, there is an advisor of studies for the degree. Every single degree pathway will have an advisor of studies. All academics are available to meet students at certain hours in the week. We have a student liaison officer employed in the school. We have a student support group. Students are encouraged to get on school committees. We have a scheme for peer mentoring whereby new students can be sort of buddied up with somebody in year 2 or year 3 to get some tips and advice, do's and don'ts, as they work through the first year of their degree. We have disability supports. We have learning development supports and a liaison officer. And we also have careers and employability officers within the school as well. So we have quite a strong infrastructure there to make sure people get the most out of their degree. And in terms of student life, and I'm coming to the end of my piece here, we have some very active student societies. We have student-led seminars, ensembles and performances, particularly there in respect of anthropology, where we'd have quite a number of performances during the year. There are a lot of student support services within the university to help you as well as within the school. And an interesting innovation which people are very interested in is the Degree Plus. So this is a mechanism whereby Queen's will recognise work you undertake outside the university during the time of your degree, and if it can be recognised, you will be awarded what's called a Degree Plus, which is again it's kind of an addition to your degree qualification, but it's to show that you have made this extra, I suppose, input or contribution during your time in the university. And then of course there is the Students' Union, which all students are members of, and which is there to provide a range of supports as well. So I don't want to go on too much longer, but I will be available at the end, obviously, for questions and answers. But what I'm going to do now is, just having given you a bit of a flavour about the school in general, I'm going to hand over to the first of my colleagues, Professor Sean O'Connell, who's going to speak about the history degree. And Sean, if you can hear me okay here, what I might ask you to do is just hover over the screen and click on, if you can see, take control. Otherwise, oh, there you are. Great. Hi.
Yep, I've got that.
Great. Okay.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. As Newis has said, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, if you knock off the video so people can see the PowerPoint, it might be easier.
Okay.
Just the video.
Sorry.
I can hear you perfectly. No, that's fine.
Okay, so I'm Sean O'Connell, as Maurice has explained. I'm a historian at Queen's University. I'm going to talk you through what it's like to be a history student, or what you could experience as a historian at Queen's, and put some emphasis on how we developed the degree over the last few years, very much with a mind on this kind of awful word in some respects, employability, but it's a very important word that we all have to think about. And we've kind of worked the history degree in such a way that I guess we kind of think about developing skills, think about creating a narrative, if you like, so that when you go forward in 3 or 4 years' time into the world of work, and you're trying to convince employers that you've developed great skills, as well as having lots of enthusiasm and a great degree, hopefully, that you can actually convince those employers that you stand out from others in that kind of employers marketplace. So let me tell you a little bit about the history degree. So straightforwardly, I suppose it's 6 modules every year across level 1, level 2, and level 3. If you're doing a single honours history degree, you take 4 history modules in level 1 and 2 other options from a range of different arts and humanities subjects. So there's quite a broad range that you can have a look at. In level 2, then you'd be taking 6 history modules, and one of those would include a skills module that's focusing very much on employability, and I'll be talking about one of those in a few minutes. And you take 3 modules in each semester. In the final year, you take 3 modules in both semesters again. In the second semester, one of those modules will be your dissertation, which is a double-weighted module. So that means that you spend a lot of time working individually with your dissertation supervisor on that module, and I'll say a little bit about that as we move on. The joint honours degrees then, so you can take quite a range of joint honours. You can within the school and within the faculty, arts and humanities faculty. So you could take, for example, history and sociology, history and politics, history and anthropology, history and philosophy, and there's lots of other joints that you could take. So that means that you would do 3 history modules in each level, level 1, level 2, and level 3, and 3 modules from your other subject. Okay, so we have a range of specialisms, as you'd expect. We have Irish history as a specialism, but if you are not interested in Irish history, then that's not a problem, because we do lots of other things as well. And that ranges across chronology, so from Alexander the Great to very present late 20th century, early 21st century history. And in terms of geography, there's a very great spread as well. So from the USA through to Asia, USSR, Central Europe, Africa, really a significant spread. And approaches as well. You might be interested in politics, or you might be interested in social history. You might be interested in religious history. You have lots of expertise in that area, lots of expertise in gender history, and increasingly a very strong expertise in public history. And that's at both undergraduate level. We also have a very lively MA in public history, and a lot of our internships where students go out and do things in museums and with other groups like the BBC, for example, revolve around our expertise and the expertise amongst our students also in public history. So give you a little bit of an example of the type of things that we do at different levels. At level 1, it's very much about introducing you to history and the study of history at university level. So it's about, as it says on the screen, managing transition, bringing you face to face with new skills, the kind of skills that you need to develop as an academic historian, undergraduate historian, moving forward. And we very much like to work around smaller courses. You'll work in, the maximum numbers you'll find in a tutorial should be no more than about 13 or 14. And you'll also be taught by the experts in the field. So we very much pride ourselves at level 1 in history that you are taught by people like myself and other colleagues, people who have lots of experience, so that when you're arriving and you're slightly inexperienced, you're slightly nervous perhaps about making that transition, we can really help you through our experience make that transition and develop those skills as speedily and straightforwardly as possible. So an example of one of the modules that we do is history and historians at level 1, and this is something that it's an award-winning module. It won an award here at Queen's, and it basically challenges students to think about history in different ways, and challenges them to work individually and in groups also to think about history in different ways. So we think very much on this module about contested pasts. So you might, for example, be given the challenge of thinking about the Holocaust. Why is it that some people deny the Holocaust? How is that possible? And how is that? So you'll think about that as an academic historian, but you'll also think about that as a public historian. So you'll be challenged perhaps to work in a group to think about how you would pitch to a museum about how you would present a museum exhibition on the Holocaust. You know, how will you present some very complex ideas in such a way that people can walk through a museum exhibition in 15 minutes and come out at the other end enlightened by you as this student group in terms of, you know, why is it that this, you know, how can anyone deny the Holocaust? And there's other equally contested paths that we might look at on the module, such as, for example, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, such as, for example, the history of slavery or the history of the Crusades. At level 2, we have different types of modules. We have survey modules, so that might include modules that look at particular periods and themes and areas. An example of that is Europe Between the Wars, which looks at takes a thematic approach to look primarily at the kind of dictatorships, really, Russia or Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and fascist Spain, fascist Italy, to introduce you to obviously very fascinating aspects of history, but also to different ways of looking at those aspects of history. So if we look at particular types of individuals, so the female experience, the experience of the soldier, the experience of the politician, the experience of the worker, but also then to do that through particularly interesting sources. So there's lots of use of film, lots of use of literature, propaganda, advertising. So, you know, introducing you to different ways of looking at very broad, interesting historical questions, and challenging you to look at them in terms of new types of sources that you may not have specialised in before. Also at level 2, then we have particular skills modules, and one that I teach is this module, Recording History, where students go out and they do their they work with a community group in Belfast or various individuals in Belfast around a particular oral history project, oral history theme. So they're developing skills, they're developing research skills, they're developing skills around ethics, what is appropriate, what is right, what is wrong, what can't you do when you're interviewing people, what, you know, how do you protect their interests, how do you protect your own interests as a researcher. So they're developing a lot of skills there, which they might go forward to an employer in the future and say, you know, I can think about ethics, I can think about research around individuals, you know, live human beings. But added to that, then they go and work with the BBC in Belfast at Radio Ulster, and they pitch ideas for documentaries to the BBC that are based on these interviews that they do. So you can see the very strong employability emphasis here, because these are students who can go forward in you know 18 months after this module and say to employers, I've pitched ideas for a radio documentary to the BBC. I've researched the BBC. I've researched them as an institution. I've explained to them why I've picked this documentary theme and why I've said to them it should be broadcast at 12 o'clock on a Sunday or 7 o'clock on a Saturday. And I've explained to them what audience will listen to that because I've done all this kind of research. They can then explain to employers that, you know, they have done lots of the kind of things that employers might want them to do for their organisation around research, presentation, pitching, working in groups. So it's a great module and one that the students really very much enjoy and that I very much enjoy. So on the screen there, you can see one of the previous students, Ryan Mallon, who's in that photograph. He's He's at the BBC working on the documentary that came out of the idea that his group presented, and that was Diamond in the Rough. About I won't give you the details here because I haven't got time, but you can have a look at the Diamond in the Rough, or have a listen to Diamond in the Rough on the BBC Sounds app. So here's how it works, and here's the before and after photographs. Here's one of the groups being grilled by BBC producers about their idea, and here's the sense of relief and achievement that they have once they had completed their pitch. And we've had a number of successes so far, and I hope to have many more successes in the future with the students. But even just having it on the CV is a great standout piece and item for students on their CVs. So in level 3, then we move forward to research-led teaching, very much working with the academic historians on their areas of expertise. There's a broad choice here, so across your time here, you might become interested in American history, you might become interested in European history, religious history, social history, gender history, and all of these choices will be reflected in a range of options, as I say on the slide there, up to 20 for you to select. So I've just selected one there from United Irishmen to Ian Paisley, taught by one of my colleagues, Dr. Andrew Holmes, and very much centred on his expertise in Presbyterian history, but in a broader sense, engaging with the social history, the religious history, the political history of Ulster / Northern Ireland. So, and it's a very popular module, one which the students very much enjoy, whether they're from Northern Ireland or they're from outside Northern Ireland. It gives them an opportunity to either understand the culture that they grew up in more deeply, or to learn about the culture that they become a student in through this module, as well as developing the kind of core skills which they're interested in at third year. At third year also then you will do your dissertation, and this is the kind of pinnacle of your time at the university as a historian. It tends to be the point at which the students here perform most strongly, because they've picked a module, picked a theme that they're interested in. They've approached their supervisor and said, is this a good idea? And they get feedback on that. Hopefully the feedback is, yes, it's a great idea. It might be, let's tweak this, let's work on this and improve it. So you'll pick an aspect of history that you're interested in. You'll go off, you'll do the reading around the secondary literature. You'll start to do the research. You'll start to draft your ideas. You'll send in your draft chapters to your supervisor. He or she will bat it back to you, and you'll produce at the end of the day an excellent piece of work, a really strong piece of work, which shows to future employers your ability to produce independent work, to produce it on time, to produce an extended piece of writing which synthesizes all the arguments in your chosen field. So it's something that really is a great achievement for our students, and one in which they become they're very happy about, and they're very proud about at the end of the day. It's tough, it's hard, but it's something that makes you stand out a little bit from other students in some other degrees in some other places. So again, it's about building skills that produce something for you at the end of the day in the world of work, and convincing employers about your strengths. So why do a history degree? I'll let you have a look at what's on the slide here. I won't read it out for you. What you can see there is lots of famous historians, and what you don't want to know about famous historians. What you want to know about is what do history students at Queen's end up doing. So on the final slides, I have some former students of mine and what they're up to now. So you can have a look at that, and I'm sure you'll have some questions for me in the Q&A session at the end. So I guess I'm handing over now to the next presenter. Perhaps Maurice will tell you who that is, or perhaps we'll find out here. It's Dominic.
It's me.
Okay, I'll let you take control, Dominic.
I will. I've taken control. Hang on. Right. Good evening, everybody. My name's Dominic Bryan. I'm a professor of anthropology at Queen's University. You're very welcome. These are strange times. So strange that, in fact, I'm doing this presentation from my bedroom, because I have a family in the rest of the house who are all who are all doing various things, and this is the only quiet place I could get. My job is to talk to you a little bit about anthropology and what we do at Queen's University, and I think that's one of the things I could say which would bring it home is to relate precisely to what our times are now. What anthropologists are interested in doing is looking at how our society works, how we relate to each other, how we bond together, and how we organize. And we're interested in all of those things that we as human beings learn that allows us to fit in or not fit into our society. Let me give you a very quick example, which is so pertinent to our present times. As this virus goes round, we've all been asked to keep our distance. Politicians have been telling us that it's absolutely vital that we keep our distance, that we don't shake hands, for example. Now, have you watched how many of those politicians up in the screens, up talking to us, as soon as they finish talking, go to the people around them and start shaking hands? They start doing that precisely because the cultural idea of greeting people, the way we meet each other, the way we work in our society, all right, is so ingrained in us. It's so appears so naturally a part of who we are, all right, that you can't stop doing it, that it's really hard to change the habits. Those things now that are putting us all at risk are so ingrained a part of who we are that it's very difficult for us to change those habits. And that's what anthropology is about. It's about how societies around the world work. It's about how women and men relate to each other. It's about how religion teaches us how to be. It's about how politics work, how power works within our groups, how economics works. And we're interested in how all of those groups are cohesive. And in an anthropology degree, we teach you firstly about those societies. You will learn about societies from all over the world. You will learn how they change. You will learn about globalization. You will learn the methods to go out and research those things. You will learn how to do what we call participant observation. You will learn how to interview people. You will learn how, as I do here, is stand around on street corners and watch how the world works. Which, again, as you can imagine, in this point of time, is extremely interesting when we're not even allowed out onto the street corners. And then we teach you how to write. We teach you how to talk about the society around you. We teach you how to present the world that you see, both in classes and to other students. So what are the skills that you're going to get doing anthropology that are going to make you of interest to other people? Now, the first thing to say is I hope that just learning to be an anthropologist is a fascinating thing. I think that the things you're going to learn about the world around you, the way you will see the world, are just fabulous in and of themselves. And for many of us who I learned about anthropology in my mid-20s, it was a revelation, and I look back on it as a great time to suddenly start seeing the world in these different ways. But what we want you to do is we start wanting you to do critical thinking. And that is true of the things all my colleagues are going to tell you during this session. What we want you to become are people who critically look at their society, whether as a historian or looking at politics or philosophy or in anthropology. We want you to look critically at how the world around you works, to try and understand how it's working. And boy, isn't that interesting at the moment as we look at that world changing, the globalized world, as we look at people all around the world reacting to the same problem in different ways. So we're interested in critical thinking. We're interested in why people in different parts of the world react in a different way. I mean, nobody could ignore the way that the United States of America is reacting to this problem of this virus. Compare that to China. Why are those two groups of people acting in different ways? What difference does politics make? What difference does culture make to all of that? So we're then interested in giving you the techniques, the research techniques around with the abilities to give you the abilities to do that. We're going to talk to you about particularly what we call qualitative research, about how you interview people. We're fascinated as anthropologists to see the world through other people's eyes. We want to understand why different people of the world see the world in such a different way. And as I said, we're interested in showing you writing, how to write about that and how to present it. There's many sorts of jobs this will take you into. All right, all sorts. But let me give you one very, very quick example, which I think is a fascinating way of understanding what anthropologists do. You're in an NGO. You get a job in an NGO, and your job is to deliver an irrigation system in Indonesia. I'm taking this off the top of my head. So you're delivering, although there's an actual real example of this. You're delivering irrigation in Indonesia. All right. You're going in. You're training people in a village to work this new irrigation system. All right. You take all of the important men in the village, and you train them, and you ask them to learn how to deliver and work this irrigation system. And then you go back a year and a half later, and you find that the irrigation system isn't working. All right. And you think about why that irrigation system might have broken down. And I've already given you enough cultural information which should give it away. The reason that irrigation system isn't working is because it's not men who go out and work in the fields. It's women who go out and work in the fields. In other words, that NGO has trained the wrong people. It hasn't fully understood the society, and it hasn't understood why and who you need to train. That's a good example of cross-cultural understanding. That's a good example of the sort of things you learn as an anthropologist when you're trying to solve problems in particular areas. And let me tell you, right now around the world, anthropologists are fully employed in all of the problems that we're having to deal with at the moment. So there's a whole range of sorts of jobs you go into, but you'll be interested in the variety of things that we learn when we're in anthropology. Now, first of all, our students do work all around the world. They will be working in projects across the globe. They will be looking at all sorts of different issues in those places. Let me give you a few examples of what my colleagues have worked on. We have colleagues who've looked at Australian Aboriginals, and they look at how those people have to exist in the modern world, and they've looked at the rights that those people have to their land and to their life. We've had other anthropologists who are interested in Eastern Europe after it stopped being socialist, who looked at those societies and how they changed at those periods of times. I've got another colleague who looks at the relationships between human beings and animals. How do we relate to the animals around them? Why do we give animals names? How do we relate to animals when we work with them? So we've got colleagues who look at all of these different things. I have a further colleague who's interested in music and how does music work in people's lives. We call those ethnomusicologists. All right, and I'll come up with some examples of their work in a moment. So when you come and do anthropology at Queen's, all right, you will get plenty of skills training. All right, so you'll be learning how to read, write, and present. All right, you'll be learning how to relate to people. You'll be learning how to do research in particular groups, and you'll be learning how to deliver research to policy groups. So if you were, say, I do work with the civil service, all right, and I teach students how to go and present our research to politicians and to people working in the civil service. You've got a chance to do placements. We've had students out working on international schools in Japan. We had an extraordinary relevant project 2 years ago. We had a student working in San Francisco researching how people work at home. So she was working in Silicon Valley, and she was looking at how all the workers had become home workers. Now, how amazing is that, as all of us now are trying to work from home? We have modules that are looking at how anthropology is applied out in the real world. How can we change the world? And we have a couple of students who are working with Google at the moment and working in all sorts of research areas. We've recently revamped the single honours degree, and probably at the core of what we do in that degree, just trying to move the slide along. The core of what we do at that degree is a dissertation. So putting it very quickly, in your second year, we will teach you how to do research in a module in the first semester. In the second semester, you will plan research somewhere in the world. During that summer, you will go out and conduct research. And in the first semester of your third year, you will write a dissertation. You will write a big project up telling us about the research that you've done. That may well be linked with NGOs, so that may well be linked with a placement, or it could be linked with a companies working in different parts of the world. So right the way through the core of your anthropology degree, you will be getting to learn how to do research, and you will have a project that will have lasted you more than 3/4 of the amount of time you're at our university. All right, and let me give you one example before I finish of the sort of learning you will get. Why are we in social groups, and how do social groups work? We have a module called Us and Them, which looks at conflict between groups and asks very profound questions. And I'm going to give you one now, which always makes people think. Why are you prepared to die for your group? All right. Why are people historically and in the modern day prepared to take up arms and kill for a large group of people who they don't know? All right. Why do groups come into conflict? All right. And that sense of group cohesion, and why a group works, and why a group comes together. Why is, if you're the size of a nation, all right, do you act and do you feel emotionally part of that nation? So we have a whole module that looks at how social groups work and how people come together. You can do anthropology as part of lots of other degrees. So you can do a joint degree with us, and I think you will find that it works extraordinarily well as a discipline with other degrees. Just to end with one last example before I hand over. I have a colleague, Yanis, and he works on music. And one of his new modules, which I witnessed just before Christmas, teaches the importance of music in our social world. And as part of his module, they actually put on a music festival. So the students learn how to design a festival, how to look at the type of music they want. They get to ask artists along. At the end of that module, they actually put on the festival. And that gives you an example of the sort of practical work that we do within the university and with anthropology at Queen's. And with that, I am going to pass you on to Tom, who's going to talk about philosophy. Tom.
Great, thanks, and welcome to everyone. As Dom said, I'm going to talk to you about philosophy and look at I guess there's in four main ways. Firstly, I think it's important to talk about our teaching and the quality of that teaching. I want to say a little about who teaches you. All the philosophers here are world-leading researchers in their area, and that's reflected in the assessment of our research over the last few years. I'm going to, like everyone else, talk a bit about the skills that we develop and the importance of skills development throughout the philosophy degree. And then I'm going to end up with a little bit about the student community here and the way that that contributes to the experience that you have, and hopefully a very good experience that you would have doing philosophy at Queen's. So to start with the teaching, our focus is right from the start to do teaching in small groups, because in terms of learning philosophy, it's often very new to people. They haven't always done that at school before. And it's a subject which you really learn by doing rather than by listening to other people. So right from the beginning, the questions are going to be looking at what is going on here. I think that's the fundamental philosophy question. What is going on? What's really happening? And what's really important? And in doing that, we look at a series of very theoretical questions and also some very practical questions. So one of the things that happens in philosophy is that it's often thought of as extremely abstract and theoretical. And some parts of it really are. So they'll be looking at questions about the nature of being, about what it is to know something, about what makes something count as art. And we do look at that in a great deal of detail. But philosophy also includes what are quite very practical questions. And as Tom indicated, some of those are very relevant now. So, for example, my own work is very much in public health ethics. And the kind of policies that are being implemented at the moment are fascinating to public health ethicists because we talk all the time about the role of the state, about changing people's behavior, and the methods to do that, which are both effective but also ethically reasonable. And so as we look through the different parts of the course, what we do is try and combine the really theoretical and abstract parts with the very practical questions. And to give a couple of examples of the way that that works on the more practical side, we have a module that's an option in the final year, which is philosophy for children, which involves students going out to primary schools and teaching philosophy and engaging with primary school students in the questions that they have. Many of those questions raise quite significant challenges to our normal way of thinking. And the idea is to develop the skills not only to answer those questions, but also to pull out what's really going on within them. A second module, one which I teach myself in the final year, it's called Practical Philosophy, and it's really about what does philosophy help us to do in the real world. So what is it that learning philosophy would help us to do in very practical, real life situations? Some are kind of very policy based and some are much more involved with things that happen in the workplace. So I think we have that balance here in a way which perhaps is a little bit unusual between the very theoretical and the very practical. We do, as Murish mentioned at the start, all our students have the opportunity to spend a semester abroad, usually in their second year. And we very much encourage that where it's safe to do so, because of the way in which we think it helps to broaden people's experience and be exposed to different ways of thinking about things, which is a very important part of what philosophy is. And in addition to the kind of core teaching, we also have a number of other activities going on throughout the year, visiting speakers. We have a philosophy weekend away where students present their own work. And all the students are welcome to be engaged with all of those as part of broadening out the opportunities that they have. Philosophy at Queen's is quite small, and so we bring in external speakers to give students the chance to listen to and engage with some of the topics that we don't actually cover ourselves, provide a broader remit. The philosophy degree, and I've just given the single honours options here, is a little bit unusual in this sense that throughout the first and second year, it's very much a kind of fixed curriculum, and that's done deliberately. Philosophy is a subject, as I said earlier, that many people don't know about before they come to Queen's, and so we want to give everyone a taster of everything. You might never not have heard of epistemology, so you don't really know whether you like it or not. So we give you a little bit of that. But there's a second reason for having everybody do the same things, and that is that all these parts of philosophy are interconnected. For teaching purposes, we split them up. So I teach moral theories, for example, but when I teach moral theories, I do a bit about knowledge, I do a bit about philosophy of language, I do a bit of philosophy of mind, because you can't do moral theories unless you know a bit about those other things too. So the idea is to enable all the students to get a full broad breadth of what happens in philosophy and to draw out the connections between the different parts. And then in the final year, there's a dissertation, just as in both history and anthropology, where you get to study something which you're interested in detail for yourself. We allow students to choose their own subjects, come up with a question that they want to engage with and work closely with an expert in that field in developing their dissertation. But then you also get more of a choice about which options you want to take. By that time, it's useful to specialize and just go into more detail in the different parts of philosophy that you're particularly interested in. I just want to say a little bit about our research expertise. I think one of the things that's important coming to Queen's in philosophy and in all the other subjects within the school is you get taught by subject experts right from the start. It's not, right from the first week you would be here, you get taught by people who are experts in the topic that they're teaching. And I just wanted to give a quick sense here of the kind of range of expertise that we have across those very theoretical questions about skepticism, about what counts as evidence, about the metaphysical implications of theism, of accounts of the existence of God, for example, but also very practical questions about hate speech, about global justice, about forgiveness, and about consent, all of which have become highly topical over the last few years. As we do all of that, a big focus of the philosophy teaching at Queen's is to develop your philosophical skills. And in doing that, we focus initially on questions like analyzing, abstracting, and constructing nuanced positions. But we also try and encourage a kind of creative and imaginative approach to problem solving. It's not always recognized, I guess, that philosophy, which often is thought of as logic and kind of detailed argument, requires that creative approach, because the big philosophy questions are all about identifying the underlying issues. What's really going on in the debates we have? What's really going on in debates about climate change? What's really going on in debates about intergenerational justice? What's really going on in debates about how to deal with a pandemic? And in doing those, the first response we have is often not the right one. There's something else going on underneath, and that's the thing we're trying to get people to uncover through discussion, through challenging each other, through challenging the staff who are teaching them, to really get and judge what's happening, and then to come up with solutions to those problems, and to evaluate which are the best solution, what's the best solution to the problem that we've identified. And all of those skills are ones which are really important when it comes to what happens after your time at Queen's. The ability to identify the real problem, to come up with a creative solution to that problem, to analyze it, to assess how well it's going to work, is something that employers of all different industries and different sectors really value. And then, as I said before, we kind of really try and engage all of that, not just on theoretical questions, but bring it back down to the concerns of ordinary life. And there we're really looking at the way in which ethical and political debate, how it runs, how good the arguments within it are, what's really happening, what's lying behind a lot of the positions that are going on. And we try and address that in a way which is sensitive to different opinions, different ways of life, different ways of doing things. And that's one of the areas where it's useful to have philosophy within a school with people like anthropologists who are just doing that same thing, and we can all learn from each other in terms of that. I think that when we're looking there, on top of that kind of creative problem solving and addressing it to engaging with real life concerns, we're also very concerned about the ability to communicate clearly and effectively. That's something we start right from the first year, where we encourage students to express their views, to present their ideas to their colleagues, and to be confident in responding to the questions that people raise. Often the topics we're talking about are controversial, contentious, and the ability to engage constructively with those you disagree with is an important part of philosophy education, and one of the important skills that we help to try and develop throughout the course of your time at Queen's. And finally, a little bit about the student community. Philosophy at Queen's is a relatively small subject, and I think that that's got some significant advantages. Students I talk to tell me they really value the sense that they work with the same students all the way through their degree. The people they meet in their philosophy classes in the first year are still there in the final year. It's easy to get lost when you come to a large institution, and having those same people, that same cohort working through together is something that we can encourage in a small subject like philosophy, but also philosophy is fully integrated with the broader school. So you have a kind of very close family kind of relationship within the philosophy cohort, but also all the activities and opportunities that come from being part of a much bigger school. The philosophy co-op themselves have a very active philosophy society. They bring in guest speakers. They present their own work to each other, as well as a set of social events. And I think I'm going to kind of wrap up at this point. I'm very happy to answer any questions, but I'll hand over here to Elodie to talk about politics.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Tom. There's a question for you in the chat box on the side, and I know Elodie's probably just getting set up there at the moment. But just to remind everybody, if they hover on their screen and press show conversation tab, there's a kind of a moving text box there that you can type questions in. And please, we're all here for you. So if you've got any question at all, the most simple thing, really don't be afraid to ask it, and we'll get some conversation going. So it benefits everybody. So I'll hand over to Elodie at this stage.
Hello and good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'll be talking about politics at Queen's now. So politics can be studied in a range of ways in the school. So it's both as a single honours degree, and also in conjunction with a number of other topics. So you can see you can study politics with languages, with law, and obviously other topics in the school like history, anthropology, international studies, or philosophy. So how does the degree look like overall? Here it is. So you've got 3 years. So as someone asked earlier, we tend to say levels 1, 2, and 3, which means first year, second year, and third year. So every semester you take 3 modules, and usually at levels 1 and 2, a module involves 2 lectures a week, 2 one-hour lectures, and then 1 tutorial a week. So lectures can be large groups, but then together with those lectures, you get a tutorial where you've got 14, 15 students maximum to discuss the topics that have been mentioned during the lecture, so that you get that small group setting for your learning. Level 3 is a lot more in small groups, and it tends to be on a seminar basis, which is pretty much a long tutorial, really, usually 2 to 3 hours. Again, you've got 6 modules per semester. In addition, as mentioned before, you can have options of studying abroad at level 3, and if you're doing single honor degree at level 2 in the second semester as well. You've got the option of doing a dissertation, and also in politics we have specific modules that are work experience modules, so that's the internship module and the placement module. So looking a bit more into the different years and the modules you've got here. So here is the example of year 1, where you've got 2 compulsory modules. So comparative politics and perspectives in politics are compulsory, and they're there to develop a good solid basis for you to proceed and study further on. So comparative politics provides you with a foundation to study the internal politics of a country. So the institutions, parliamentarism, presidentialism, for instance, or party politics, things about political parties, about elections, about electoral systems. And so that then you can better analyze the politics of this country or any other country. Perspectives on politics is a lot more about the big issues in politics, the big ideas of politics, and provide you sort of basis to study further on in political theory. And then, because you need to study 6 modules, you've got these 2 compulsory modules. Then you can choose to take 4 more modules in politics, and you've got a choice here of options on Europe, on contemporary issues, which is quite a reactive module that can change from year to year. So you might have someone come and talk to you for 3 or 4 weeks about climate change, for instance, as we do have now, and then someone talking to you about Brexit, or who knows, maybe we'll have politics at a time of crisis soon. Then you've got international issues as well, and you can address. If you want to delve a bit into different topics, you can also take 2 modules from across the faculty at level 1. So you could have 4 politics modules plus 2, so including something on, I don't know, languages or economics, law, etc., or history. So moving on, so you can study, as I mentioned, as a single honor politics or as a joint degree, in which case every year you would do only 6 politics modules and 6 modules from the other topic. But even with single honor politics, you can still study 1 module other than politics each year. And at level 2, sorry, the 2 is missing here. Here are a number of modules. And modern political thought and studying politics are your core module this year. They're compulsory modules to take in the first semester. Studying politics is really important module, and it is compulsory if you want to do a dissertation at level 3, or if you want to do one of the work experience modules. It's a research module. It explains to you how to do research, how to analyze texts, how to interview people, how to analyze quantitative data, how to analyze statistics. And this is very important. It's a skill, analyzing data, that is very much appreciated by employers as well. It's a really crucial module here. And then you've got choice again of taking an additional 4 modules in the school. You can see some of them look at the internal politics of a specific country, the US and the UK. You have some that are quite comparative, politics of the EU, deeply divided society, etc. Some look at Northern Ireland, some are more international in focus. So there's a lot of flexibility here. Already at level 2, if you're a single honor politics student, you can do Erasmus or go on to one of the exchange programs further afield. And at level 3, you do not have compulsory modules anymore, and so I've divided this into themes. So you can see you've got modules that are more about politics and political philosophy or theory. So you've got stuff about Northern Ireland, you've got comparative modules on political parties and party systems, or on the far right, on women in politics. And you also can choose some modules on political theory or political philosophy. It's very flexible. You can also have a number of modules that are on international issues, like arms control, asylum and immigration, which are very topical. At level 3, people are really teaching about what they research. We're specialists of what we teach, but it's really at level 3 that this specialism shines in particular. So, for instance, we all do research on the topic that we study. Like I teach on political parties and party systems, and that is what my research is about. So level 3 is quite flexible. So you could do 6 modules, or you could do 5 taught modules and a placement, which is a work experience module, in which you spend a day and a half with an employer, and then you do the work that they want you to do, and then you have a little policy project to do, and that's what you will be assessed on. Or you could choose to do 4 taught modules and an internship, which counts for 2 modules, because instead of spending a day and a half with an employer, as in the placement, you would spend 2 days with that employer. And again, you've got a piece of research to do for the organization that is also assessed by us. We've got placements with the Northern Ireland Civil Service, Department of Education, the Executive Office, Department for Finance, etc. This varies from year to year. We also have placements with Stratagem, which is a public affairs consultancy. We have placements with voluntary organizations like Women's Aid, for instance. And we've got placements with the Equality Commission and Northern Ireland Local Government Association. There's a variety of places students can work in. You can also do a dissertation. You cannot do both the internship and the dissertation. And then the dissertation is a research piece. So you've got 3 opportunities to do some research, some policy research through the internship and the placement, and some more really academic research throughout your year at level 3 with the dissertation. The way you're taught, I mentioned this a little bit before. You've got 2 one-hour lectures and a 1-hour tutorial at levels 1 and 2. In your final years, it tends to be more seminar, where you spend all the time together in a small group setting. And then there's a mix of a bit of a lecture, maybe some student presentations, in particular emphasis on group discussions here and student-led discussions. Outside of contact hours, there may be more requirements for group work, but also a lot of individual work naturally. There may even be some role play exercises like Model NATO, or exercise on thinking about planning and working how the European Council work. One of our colleagues has just developed a board game about how legislation goes through in the European Union, etc. And there's a whole range of ways in which we assess you. So traditional essays, there are also a few exams, but we increasingly vary the way we assess you in order to make sure we develop those writing and presentation skills that employers value particularly. So we might ask you to do policy papers in which you analyze policy issues and make policy recommendations. You might have to do presentations and poster presentations and all sorts of different types of assessment. I even asked some of my students to write blog posts in British politics. And as has been mentioned before, there's beyond lectures and tutorials. You can go abroad, second semester level 2 or level 3. You've got dissertations where you really choose your topic. You can get work experience, and then outside of this, outside of classroom settings, we've got visitors to come to talk to us about the research in topics that are relevant to your research, and the student societies have all sorts of activities. and also invite speakers to add to all the topics you'll hear about in politics. There's a lot of student support, and here are some of the skills you'll be getting throughout the degree. So thinking critically and independently, knowing where to find information and how to present it orally and in writing, presenting complex issues in a simple way, arguing and using evidence is very important as well, thinking laterally and bringing issues from different topics together as well, working independently, but also working as teams, working to time constraints and managing work-life balance, etc. So here are a few slides that you can look at later about some of our graduates who've gone on to work in a range of issues, from like education to the media to public policies and the civil service. Thank you very much. I will stay on, and if there are any questions in the text boxes on the side, I will happily answer them while my colleague Stefan talks about the PPE program. Thank you very much.
Okay, so should we move on? Yeah.
Yes, please, Stefan, go ahead. Yeah, right.
Right, great. So I'm just trying to get this sorted to make sure that I'm in control of the slides. Okay, very good. Good evening to everyone, and thank you for sticking with this webinar and listening to this final session before we get to some voices from students. So my name is Stefan Andreasson. I'm a political economist by training. And up until a few years ago, I convened our PPE degree, so I suppose I'm fairly well placed to speak a little bit about it and what we think the value of the degree is, how the degree structure is set up, and so on. The first thing I should say is I'm piggybacking a little bit on what my colleagues have already done, so I am not going to speak too much in detail about specific modules that are part of the course, although I will speak about the course structure. So what I want to do instead is I want to speak a bit in just general terms about the value of the degree, what I think you get out of doing a PP degree at Queen's. And obviously then some of that discussion is taking place in the context of what two of my colleagues, Elodie and Tom, have already spoken about in terms of two of the three constituent subjects of the degree. Okay, so we'll get started. The first thing I wanted to say is, in terms of this degree, what you get out of it, and specifically what you get out of it at Queen's, is the following. I try to come up with sort of a good way of summarizing the study over 3 years of three distinct core disciplines. And the best I can come up with anyways is the sense that you get intellectual versatility and dexterity out of this degree. So what we have is, from this degree, a grounding and an expertise in three disciplines that are core disciplines in the arts and humanities and social sciences. So politics, philosophy, and economics. That means it's a challenging degree in the sense that you have to wrap your head around three distinct subjects, but it also makes it, for a variety of reasons, a very valuable degree. So there's a few reasons for this, and I've put a few of them on the slide here that you can see in front of you. The first one to say is that it is a demanding degree, again, because you have to deal with three core subjects over the 3 years, including specific modules designed to integrate the study of the three subjects, and I'll get to those later on. There's a high entry requirement, which means it's a flagship degree in our faculty, and it's sort of, in that sense, it has a value, I think, both for students and employers, and I'll get back to that later on as well. The other thing we might say about the degree is that, well, and I think this is a good way of putting it, you get 3 for the price of 1, in the sense that you do study 3 distinct disciplines, which means that you get a multidimensional lens on many of the contemporary social and political phenomena that you may be really interested in and are the reason why you want to come and do a social science degree here at Queen's. The other point then is that it is a degree that is valued by employers. And this is again because of the range of skills that we impart to you during the 3 years of this degree. You get a understanding, obviously, of politics, how power is channeled and work in society, and how political decision-making takes place. But you also get a grounding in philosophy and everything from understanding the basics of logic and logical reasoning to the big moral questions that underpin the political decisions we make. And of course, you get a solid university level excuse me, grounding in economics, so that you can understand the economic constraints in which political decision making takes place, and vice versa, how politics and the policy that comes out of the political process affects economic developments over time. So for all those reasons, I think the degree is highly valued by employers. The last thing to say, which has a little bit to do with the history of the degree, is that there is a high sense, I think, of prestige and brand recognition, if that's the right way to put it, of the PP degree internationally. So this is not just a sort of esoteric creation of the British educational establishment in the 1920s to sort of provide a modern alternative to the classics degrees that used to be the passport into higher political life, but it is indeed a degree that has become recognized around the world as being a very good springboard into both the business world, the world of finance, and of course the world of politics. And of course, as you may or may not know, the PP degree is in many ways a who's who of sort of political decision makers in the United Kingdom and above and abroad. Okay, I think I am losing the slide pointer here. Okay, and the final thing that I think is valuable about the way that we've put the degree together is that we place a lot of emphasis on student choice. So you can design the degree to suit your needs and requirements in various ways. You can specialize in one of the 3 subjects, or you can go for taking more equal amounts of the 3 as you go along, and more on that at the very end when we get to the degree structure. Okay, make sure that the slider is running away with me here a bit. Right, so to sum up that bit of the discussion, what I think the degree provides for you is, in many ways, an intellectual foundation and cornerstone of contemporary social science with a rich heritage and tradition. And it teaches you, and I think this is really an important point in thinking about why you would do a PP degree as opposed to studying one of these 3 subjects in isolation, is that it teaches you to navigate, as I put it here, the real world overlap of issues in business and policy communities. Okay, and how do we do that? Well, in various ways, but we start off very much with what we see as the intellectual foundations of modern social science. This is a bit of a monochromatic, maybe, representation of some of the things we do on the PP degree, but we do start with the big ideological debates that have really shaped the modern world and modern society, right? So from the ideological debates between liberalism and socialism, as represented here by Adam Smith as a moral philosopher and Karl Marx as an economic historian and philosopher, from those debates to the more modern post-World War II debates on variants of liberal economic organization, as represented here by John Maynard Keynes and Friedrich von Hayek, right? Important debates that really shape the socio-economic organization of the world we live in today. Those are the foundations that we deal with across the 3 constituent subjects of the PPE as we go along. And that, of course, in turn allows us to provide this then multidisciplinary lens, this multifaceted lens of study on the wealth and plethora of other contemporary subjects that we may be interested in studying today. And both Elodie and Tom previously have spoken about what some of those specific subjects are in philosophy and politics, right? So the point with the PP is that it gives you a very good ability to navigate what we might think of as the corridors of power in modern society. That intersection in particular between political and economic decision making that is so important to shaping the society we live in. The point is not to churn out Sir Humphrey clones, and this may be a bit of a dated reference, but I would suggest for those of you who aren't familiar with Yes Minister and have any kind of remote interest in PPE or politics, I would suggest you go and catch up on some of the old episodes of Yes Minister on YouTube. But this idea of learning to navigate the corridors of power, I think, is a really important aspect of what the PPE degree will do for you. Okay. So I'll move on here in the interest of time very quickly to say a few specific things about the degree here at Queen's. So it is the premier degree of its kind in this island, North and South, if you want to study PPE. I alluded briefly before to the fact that it has the highest entry requirement in our faculty, together with accounting and law, which I think suggests that it's recognized as a degree that is selective, that is demanding, and therefore ends up having a lot of students who do work really hard and do quite well on this degree. It's a well-established program. We've been running the degree since 2009. And the good thing with that is that we've now for several years then had some pretty clear trend data that we can look at in terms of how students perform on the degree and importantly what they do when they're finished. And I think the best way to sum that up is that we've had consistently very strong student performance and outcomes on the degree. We have a lot of PP students who have won prizes for their academic achievement in the school, in the faculty, and in the university, and so on. And I think that's indicative of the quality of students that we've had on the degree and the work they've done. We have an active PP student society and a network of students that seem to do a lot in terms of networking with each other and keeping in touch after they leave. And we have an academic staff in our school that's particularly well suited to the provision of this degree. So we have the advantage, which some universities don't, of having 2 of the 3 constituent subjects under one roof, as it were, that being philosophy and politics, which is quite valuable because putting together a degree like this requires quite a bit of management between the 3 subjects to make sure it all works together. And then we have a good working relationship with the Queen's Management School that delivers the bulk of the economic teaching on the degree. Okay, that's a lot from me in terms of what the degree is about. I wanted to leave you with a few testimonials from former students. They happen to be a few students that I've had the pleasure to work with in various capacities when they did their degree here. And so I think what Ed has to say, who is someone who then went on to a very good career in corporate law in the City of London, his emphasis on the relationships that have been built between students and staff, and the fact that it's a relatively small and coherent cohort of students that work together is something that I think not only Ed has found valuable, but quite a lot of other students as well. So these are points, I guess what I'm saying is that these are points that I see echoed in the testimonials of a lot of students who have gone through this degree. And likewise, Aisha Sobi, who is a former student of ours who went on to an internship with the Bank of England and is now doing a PhD as a Lee Kuan Yew scholar at the University of Cambridge. Her emphasis on the flexibility and intimacy of the course, the small and close-knit cohort and so on are again the sort of valuable things that our students seem to have really appreciated about the course over the years. Okay, but you can read the rest of that for yourselves. And in interest of time then, I'll wrap up quickly with a few points on the degree structure. So this is a bespoke degree. we have to have quite a few required courses because you are getting a university level introduction and comprehension of 3 distinct subjects. So in first year, you do 2 economics courses, Intro to Economics and Quantitative Methods, 1 philosophy course on philosophy and human nature, and 1 politics course called Perspectives on Politics. And then you have 2 choices. In second year, we do something quite important for this course, and that is that we provide you with 2 core interdisciplinary modules. So these are bespoke modules. One is called Democracy, Ethics and Economics, and the other one, the Politics of the Devolved UK, which are intended to really synthesize and bring together the study of these 3 subjects in one specific module, well, in these 2 modules. And the Politics of the Devolved UK is taught every year by 1 member of staff from economics and 1 from politics. Third year looks similar in terms of the choices of dissertations, internships, and study abroad that we have for our politics degree. And so you can choose 6 modules, or you can choose these double-weighted options plus 4 modules. Okay, and I think I will leave it there, and I'm happy to take questions both in the chat and in the Q&A session later on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you everybody for who's still with us. Now, at this point, I realize there are questions coming in on the conversation on the text box, which is great, and please do, you know, there's no such thing as a silly question. If there's anything small or big, please type it up and we'd like to answer. If anybody at this moment, though, would like to unmute their audio and ask a question of one of my colleagues who are all there, Dominic, Sean, Tom, Elodie, and Stefan are all here now. And I mean, if you'd like to ask a question, just unmute and speak. There's absolutely no problem. I know it's a large group, but this is what we do in a university, okay? And if I don't hear from anybody, and please do keep the questions coming in, we have on standby here 3 of our students who I should thank, first of all, for making themselves available. Oh, somebody got a question? No? Okay, I will maybe hand over then to our first of our, hang on there, to Sarah. I see you've tuned in, so Sarah Foster from History.
Yes.
Sarah, go ahead and speak.
Hello.
Great.
Hi, can people hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear?
Yep.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you see me?
Okay. You might need to just unclick
I hear you.
the camera. But go ahead, Sarah, that's okay.
Okay, so I'm in a bit of an awkward position at the moment because I am on a ferry. So I might just have to talk at you for a few minutes, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. Yeah, so I am a first-year history student, originally from Liverpool. So my contact hours, or my typical week, would be 9 hours in classes, and then about maybe 2 hours per module, maybe more, maybe 3 hours outside of classes. So you would typically have either 2 hours for a tutorial and then 1 hour for a lecture, or the other way around, which is a nice mix, I think. In terms of my course, I find that there's a great, sorry, getting distracted. I find that there's a great range of modules that you can do, and you have, you're spoilt for choice really in terms of time periods and also different skills that you can develop. So first year goes from ancient Rome until 20th century Ireland. Also, what appealed to me with history at Queen's is the different types of assessment. So for me in first year, I haven't had any sit-down examinations. They've all been some form of essay or minor assessment, such as 500-word tutorial journals or article reviews. And that is a real benefit to me as someone who really struggles with exams. Yeah, so that's what is a really big plus about coming to Queen's for history, as well as, of course, being in Belfast. There's a lot of public history all around. Yeah, so that's me done for now, but I'll happily take any questions.
Brilliant. And if anybody's any questions, Sarah, I know time is slightly against us, so I'll move straight to Katrina, if that's okay. If you're there, Katrina. Hello, Katrina. If you just unclick the audio.
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Hi, I'm here.
So, Katrina, you're studying history and French. Do you want to speak for a
Hi,
quick
I'm
minute?
here.
Yes, we can hear you. Or Catherine.
Okay, perfect. So I picked history and French because for me, I thought that, you know, history is a skill and French languages are a skill. And so for me, there's a lot of things that kind of interchange together. I'd say I probably have a little bit more contact time than Sarah. I'm in university for maybe 11 hours a week, but that's because I have oral classes for French as well as actual lectures and stuff. For me, a daily week, if I spend 11 hours in class, I have Fridays off university, which is great because that means I've got lots of time to do my reading. So I'd probably say I get about 100 pages of reading per module a week, which is, you know, it takes as long as it takes. If you're writing notes, it takes more time. If you're a quick reader, obviously it takes less time, but it's quite good for me because it means I can get involved with a lot of sport, stuff like that as well, which is obviously handy. I think history at Queen's is really good because we have a lot of choice to do what we want. So 2 of our modules this year have been able to subset into mini modules, so you're able to pick sort of what suits your personal interests a bit more. So I've done modules on deviancy, so I'm able to sort of tailor where the targets of sort of what I like and dislike are in, and they're completely different to anything that I've ever done at school, which is nice. But again, if you're interested in the topics that you've done at school before, you can equally go back and revisit them in a lot more detail, which is probably the favorite thing about my course. And I'd just say for people who are holding offers in history or in any other subject, just when you're picking your optional modules for year 1, or you're deciding whether you want to do a joint honours degree or a single honours degree, just don't be afraid of trying something new, because if you don't like it, like, you can work around it and you can always switch it and stuff. So if you want to try a language for the first time, not only could you try it from beginners at university level, because there is beginners classes for all sorts of languages, but there's also language school options available. You know, it's trying something new, not just in the classroom, but it's also outside the classroom as well. So you've got a lot of options and it's meant to be fun. So enjoy it, I would say.
Sorry, I muted there by accident. Katrina, thanks so much. And I don't know if Catherine, are you there, Catherine? Can you hear me, Catherine, in respect to philosophy and politics? No?
Hello?
Hello, Catherine. Hi, Catherine. We're running out of time fast, but I'd really like to, if you wanted to speak about philosophy and politics to everybody, that would be great.
Yeah, that's great. I'll just so I actually did philosophy and politics only until quite recently, and then I did switch to a single honours in politics just because philosophy wasn't my cup of tea, but don't let that put anybody off. It was amazing, just not my thing. So for me, I'm like Sarah, I have 9 hours a week, and I spend the rest of the time, well, not all the time, but I do all my work in like Macleay Library because I am incapable of working at uni. But it's just like a really great course because you get the theoretical side and also you get to apply that to the practical side of things. So like I'm doing the issues in contemporary politics at the module at the moment. So you sort of get the political background to it, but then you're actually looking at, you know, what's going on in the world today. Like we're looking at Iran and the US and things like that. And it's just really great. And I would say, like, if you're thinking about, you know, taking up an offer in the School of HAPP and you do come here, just like throw yourself in and try out like stuff you haven't necessarily considered doing before in terms of modules. And also I just quickly answer the question that was in philosophy and politics, is it 50-50? Yes, like it's a joint degree, so it's and not with, so they are like equally weighted. And in first year it was 3 politics, 3 philosophy modules. So I think that continues. Yeah.
Excellent.
If there's any more questions, just put them in the box.
Yes, indeed. Catherine, thank you very much. Thank you to all 3 of you, and for answering questions as you go along, and particularly to you, Sarah. I know you're on your travels. You've had great difficulty getting moving, but we wish you well and stay safe on your travels as well. Okay, at this point, we'll just move to, again, for those of you still remaining with us, I know numbers have been dropping off, but people have clearly heard what they want to know. Are there any questions anybody would like to ask my colleagues before we start to bring things to a conclusion? I can see there's more activity going on in the conversation box, which is great. Anybody there want to unmute, or is that okay? Just say hello, otherwise somebody might be, no? Okay. Well, if not, then it really just remains for me to thank you all for tuning in. You will have seen in the presentation that for each of my colleagues who spoke, their email address is in the presentation title page as well, and that's there deliberately because they'd love to hear from you. So if there's something you'd rather not speak in a large group setting such as now, if you want to email them directly, they'd be more than happy to email or indeed FaceTime, have a one-to-one conversation with you. We'd love to see you. You know, you're clearly interested in coming to Queen's. We would really like you to come. We have a fantastic school in the School of HAPP, almost just over 80 academic staff, and amongst the largest in all its disciplines in Britain and Ireland. And you won't regret it. Okay, people do come to Queen's and come to HAPP and have a really great experience academically, personally, socially, and so on. So please, you know, get all the information you can, and I know my colleagues in the faculty office will be in touch with you. So otherwise, stay safe at this time, and we'll keep feeding information out to you if and as we get it around things like admissions. So we'll leave the, I'll mute now, and sorry, I should put on the video here, and see if this works. For me, yes, okay, there, okay, we'll say goodbye, and thank you for joining us, and we'll leave the chat box open so we can keep the conversation going. Okay, look after yourself.
That's great, Mears, thank you so much. And as Mears says, please feel free to get in contact with us with any questions. Everyone should have my details already because I've been emailing back and forth with a few of you. But of course, if you want to contact my colleagues in the school, please feel free to do so. And thank you so much to everyone in the school for making this information session amazing. And I hope you all got what you needed out of the session. But yeah, be safe and keep in contact. Thanks so much.